Don, do you want to start or you want me to?
Let me start by introducing you. Okay, so all of us who are viewing later on today or in the future, welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying our parent seminar, and those of you who are here with us, I want to introduce Dr. Heather Holmes and Mr. Don Pumphrey, who are going to talk to us a little bit about the really sticky situation students get when they start sending photos of themselves to their peers and the legal ramifications of that. So, did you guys take
Hi, good morning. Both my kids go here. Brady started pre-K1 12 years ago, and when I first came to Fort Lauderdale and I didn't know anybody, my husband looked at me and said, "Go to your first mom's night, have a great time. Don't tell anybody what you do for a living. Don't talk about work." So here we are 12 years later, and I'm going to talk all about work. So I'm a forensic psychologist, and what that means is I evaluate individuals who've been arrested or who are currently inmates and looking for appellate issues, and then I testify in court. And I have a subspecialty in the evaluation of sexual offenders. So I evaluate sexual offenders here in Florida, as well as I do a lot of work in Washington, D.C., and I do a lot of work up and down the Eastern Coast, a couple things in New York. So that's my background. It's weird. I don't talk about it at mom's nights that much. And Don is one of my largest clients, and one of the reasons why I think Don is helpful is because he gives me a lot of clients that are arrested for some sort of sexual offense. And what we think as parents is a sexual offense is somebody who goes and commits like a date rape, or somebody who gets too blotto and then they do something they regret. But the reality is the majority of sex offenders that I think Don and I are seeing, and Don is an attorney in Tallahassee, so a lot of the clients he sends me are FSU students. And we don't know this yet, but the majority of individuals in Florida that apply to FSU don't get in because it's now become ridiculously difficult. So these are really bright kids. We have a client that's on a Bright Scholars, and he has lost that Bright Scholar. Most of these kids / young adults have not committed what we call a contact offense. They haven't touched anybody, they haven't blocked their ears to not hear the word no. What they've done is there's something called, and Don will talk more about it, the NECMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children? Oh my gosh, I can't get it right.
National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We call it NCMEC, just so we don't have to say that long.
Yeah, and so what they do is if there's any photos on your phone, those get sent to the iCloud. If you have looked at any sort of videos that are deemed inappropriate, those sometimes they're embedded with programs that automatically send them and store them in your iCloud. If, as you are parents, I'm assuming your children don't pay for their phone with their credit card, it's under your name, your address, and so when some of these like Google, any of these, Apple, they see something, they have programs that go through and they see something that raises an eyebrow, they send it to them, and then NCMEC will contact local law enforcement with the IP address, the address, the name of the person that owns the phone, which is again not my children, it's me, and they come to your home. If any of those things are on your phone, and by things, Don, why don't you just list in Florida law what is considered there's no children in here, right? Child pornography. In Florida statutes, so that we're all clear, because it's a lot broader than what we had thought.
So it's a photograph of any child exposing any part of their genitalia in a lewd manner, and lewd manner is a pretty broad definition. So if perchance a minor is posing or something and naked, it's considered lewd. So it's very broad, and it's very scary.
Sorry, Don. Doesn't that include buttocks and breasts?
Yes.
So any young teenage girls sending pictures of their unclothed breasts or chest area to somebody else, just so that we're clear, that's so broad, and that sounds like, kind of Dud George for us, right? Like I would never take picture, I don't want any photos of those. But, their phones are their extensions of their hand, their extension of their body, and there's a level of impulsivity that is present literally until they are 25, 26, according to brain development. So that's why you could be at MIT or Harvard and be pre-med and still get alcohol poisoning doing a keg stand. It's not that you're not intelligent. It's that you're impulsive, you're in the moment, friends egg you on, and you take, you can add, you can do math, those 4 cherry bomb shots were a bad plan, but you don't lack the ability to look forward, weigh consequences in the moment. And so that part of your brain develops starting really around age 11, and it gradually goes on an incline and finishes and completes until you're about 25, 26. And there's a lot of research on that, which is why we have children in prison that were sentenced as they were direct filed as adults and sentenced as adults, but they were children. So now the Supreme Court says we need to go back and look at that because there's brain science that says maybe they're not the same as like a 40-year-old. So when you combine the impulsivity that neurologically is completely normal with the phone being an extension of their hand and their just inability to understand that once you take a photo, it is memorialized, right? Because everything just zaps to this weird iCloud that I can't manage to get into, but people in law enforcement and certainly the providers can. So anybody considering a Catholic high school for their children, there is pretty much a blanket policy that any photo that would meet legal criteria for child pornography, which is a photo of breasts, genitalia, or buttocks, is a direct referral to law enforcement. And there is a case in Miami-Dade County at a Catholic school where a young man, a boy, was 16 years old. He has a girlfriend. Another girl likes him, so she sent him a picture of her breasts. And he did not respond, didn't save it to his cloud, he didn't upload it to his photos, he just ignored it. And she got angry. So she told the administration on him. And of course they come and they say, let me have your phone. And they take his phone. It's an immediate referral to law enforcement. And he is arrested. You can't go back to your school. And he has, because technically it's not that you asked for it, it's not that you sought it, it's the pure possession of it. And so he was in possession of a photo, even though he didn't request it, that is considered under Florida statutes of child pornography. There is a client that Don and I have that is it's so head scratching. He's at Florida State, not anymore. He was there on a Bright Scholar, again, a graduate of our Catholic high schools in this area, and 19 years old, great kid. I mean, comes from a lovely family. I remember his mom said, I tried to get him to have alcohol with us and just have a glass of wine at dinner, and he's like, no. And she's like, I want you to do this with us before you go to college. He never even had alcohol before he went to college. He received on Snapchat, and I'll go through the various different social media issues, but he received on Snapchat a video. And the problem with things like Snapchat, and I'm not saying children shouldn't have it, I'm saying you guys need to go in and really look at it, is they will be friends of friends of friends, and just like us on Facebook and Instagram, when it sends to you, oh, have you tried being friends with these people? Their wide social net is massive, and so they are friends with people they've never laid eyes on, they're friends with people they think and assume go to a different school. I have no technology, no ability, and I can literally make, in 2 minutes, an absolute fake account saying I'm a 15-year-old girl or a 15-year-old boy. I know where a cool school is. I know what kids think is cool. I can look at your photos and decide what you're into, and I can actually let you think that we have a lot in common. That being said, he received one video, and it was a video of somebody doing micro motorcycle wheelies. And 7 seconds later, that video clicks over to a video of 2 prepubescent boys engaging in sexual acts. He didn't ask for it, he didn't want it. He thought, because he's never seen anything like this is fake, this is crazy. And he sent it to his friend and said, you seen this? This is nuts. And I think it was 9 months later, NCMEC finds it, because it takes them forever to find this. And they sent something to the school, they sent something to Leon County Police Department, and he's picked up. And he's lost his Bright Scholar. He has the inability under Title IX to attend college unless it's approved. He's living at home, and the no contact in order to bond out means you can't be around anybody under 18. So he could not go to Thanksgiving with his family because his younger cousins are under 18. Now again, this is a kid who, has no issues. I've already evaluated him. There's nothing wrong with him other than he didn't know that what he was in receipt of was a problem. So, and Don can tell you, this is things that we get all the time. I have children that were on scholarship for a hockey scholarship to an Ivy League school. And when he was 15, he, off of 2 Google clicks, located what would be child pornography, except, when he's 15 and he's looking at videos of 14, 15-year-olds, as much as we might recoil at that, for him it's somewhat age appropriate, still illegal, and he hadn't looked at them in a while. And once he turned 18, because it had taken some time, they found it. Police come to his house, he's arrested. He was looking at 30 years in prison because Florida law is very clear and very punitive about this kind of thing. He pled down, he went through a lot of money, a lot of difficulty, and he's serving 3 years. He went to prison 3 weeks ago, and because he's 18 years old, he was terrified, and he's in what we call protective management because his charge is a sex charge. He's in an open population prison, and he was terrified, so he's living in confinement for the next few years of his life. So, again, these are like horrible stories, but they are things that are happening to private school kids. They are things that are happening to kids that are absolutely not doing what we struggled with, which is having too much to drink and a date rape issue. They are struggling with the horrible effects of social media. And so, things that we see and view as harmless, like, back in my old school day of like when boys would moon each other, and I remember we'd go on field trips in the buses and they'd moon each other and be like, oh, there's so-and-so's backside. Nowadays, you take a photo and you send it to somebody. Under Florida law, that's child pornography. So I know, Don, you had a PowerPoint, so I should probably stop my freak out spiel.
You're taking a lot of my good material. That's okay.
You've got it like in writing. I feel like that's better, so
I'm actually enthralled listening and everything else, but you're taking all my stuff.
No, go. You do your thing.
I'm joking. Dr. Holmes asked me to do this presentation. I am glad to do it. I hope it helps. If it saves one parent and one child, or 2 parents and a child, it was worth the presentation and the time. So I'm more than happy to get started. I'm just not sure I'm the host. Am I?
You should be able to share. I set it to allow everyone to share your screen.
Let's try. And everyone bear with me.
They're all like, we're gonna watch, I'm gonna watch this.
Okay, well, I have the PowerPoint, and I have it up. It's not letting me share it, but let's see. And my apologies for the technical difficulties. I am not the most tech savvy. I hire a company to work on technology, but if I can flip this, it's a really nice presentation. If it's not, then I'm going to just tell everyone what it is, and I'll share the presentation with the host or Dr. Holmes. The first thing I'd like to ask is this. So anyone here or anyone who views this, please send an email with any questions afterwards, and please forward those to me, because the parents are the ones that really are having to deal with these issues, and it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. So a little bit about me, very quickly. Don Pumphrey, I'm an attorney in Tallahassee. I'm the owner and founder of the Pumphrey Law Firm. I focus my practice on state criminal defense, and prior to that, a little bit about my background. I was in law enforcement for the state of Florida. I worked Dade and Broward County. I'm from Tallahassee, and that gave me some great experience, but I was trained at what to identify as far as child pornography. So starting back in the 80s, I followed child pornography law enforcement activity ever since that time. And when I first started in private practice in 1999, child pornography and law enforcement were only letting statewide prosecutors handle these cases. And there was an office out of Jacksonville and Miami. You had to go there, you had to view the images, and FDLE handled everything. Now they've sparsed everything out to the local agencies, and the local agencies are partnering with the federal government because a lot of cases get charged federally, especially if they find one of these individuals posing as a teenager and grooming and soliciting your children. No one, absolutely no one, can provide a secure connection to the internet. Absolutely anything connected to the internet in any way, shape, or form is by itself unsecure. If any of you have bought a smartphone, a smart TV, if you'll read the literature, you know, the small pamphlets with all that tiny writing, has big disclosures in there, and it tells you it's not secure, and that's exactly right. The dangers that Dr. Holmes talked about is what we're going to focus on, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions to protect, you know, our children here in the state of Florida from ever having to find someone like me, because I've sat with families and it's just, it's first of all shocking and hard to conceive, but we're going to go through this, and you know, I can't get the PowerPoint to work. My apologies for that, but I will send it. And if you guys want to redo this when I have somebody to help me get the PowerPoint to work, we will do so. But
No,
let's get started.
I made you the host, so I don't know. I made you the host, if that helps.
Do you want to try again? He said he made you the host.
He did, and I'm hitting screen share, and it's giving me a signal I've never seen before. But let's give this a shot. There's something on my system that's blocking.
Oh.
So that has to do with my IT department. So I'll do this presentation, my apologies. So we titled this Social Media Safety for Teens. It doesn't just apply to teens. This can apply to elementary school children, junior high, high school, and college and beyond. Adults are not, you know, they're not immune from it. How many of you can tell me right now every image that is on your phone, just your phone? Anybody? You can tell me absolutely every image that's on your phone. The answer to that is nobody can, not me or anyone else. And so there are benefits to social media, but there are dangers. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to tell you some of the social media outlets that are out there. I want to start out with telling you that that ICAT, the Internet Crimes Against Children, estimates that 84% of teens are using social media. 95% of teens have cell phones, smartphones, access to the internet and computers. What's dangerous with that is that they go on different platforms, and usually it starts with either gaming, kids that play video games. It starts with trying to find a celebrity, something of that nature. And so they go to various platforms such as Discord, okay? Discord is a legitimate platform. They cooperate with law enforcement and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they send out cyber tip lines. They have the ability on their platform to identify certain images that have been marked or are in the process of being marked as child pornography. And once that tag goes on that image, everywhere that image is shared, transferred, downloaded, viewed, it sends a cyber tip line to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is an organization that works directly with law enforcement. They then take that cyber tip line, they send it directly to the local agency that they identify where the IP address originates. The law enforcement officers then take that, they take the cyber tip line, they do some research and very little research, and the next thing you know, you're hearing a knock. And it's usually a TAC force or somebody else, and they're there to seize all your computers and everything else, and they actually do forensics in your house, and everybody's sitting there, and sometimes people are handcuffed. They get the images, they arrest the individual they identify as having the device that has the images on it. So that includes your home computers, laptops, tablets, smart TVs, anything that's able to store a download from the internet. And here's the even scarier part. Everyone here has been on the internet and you see these things called pop-ups. Show of hands, how many people know what a pop-up is? Okay, good. Google calls them interstitials, and by the way, Google doesn't like them. But those people that do pop-ups, they are like an ad agency, and they get paid every time a pop-up comes up on a computer screen. What they don't tell you, and what you don't know, and what is super, super scary, is the pop-under. How many of you have seen a pop-under? That's right, no hands. That's because you can't see it. It sits on the back of your computer and pops under everything on the screen. You never see it. But what you don't know is that pop under will download images to your computer, your smartphone, your device, and they usually come from going to various sites, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and it will automatically, as a machine, especially with the advent of AI, will start downloading images automatically. And it's a form of malware. There are 10 different types of various malwares and programs, but it is scary because no one ever knows those images are on their computer. And so what happens is law enforcement has actually got to the point to where they go in the cache. So when an image or anything is downloaded, there's a temporary place where it's kept. It's called your cache. And they'll go and open that, and they have taken the position that if it's in the cache, it's been viewed. And why is it important about the view? So in Florida, child porn is very simple under the statute. It's a possession law. So they have to prove that you're either in actual or constructive possession of the illegal image. And so possession can be actual, meaning that it's actually on your person. So if you have your cell phone and it's on your person and they hook it up to their forensic computer and all of a sudden they find a guy doing a wheelie on a motorcycle that looks, by the way, super cool, any kid or adult that saw it would look at it for a short period of time, and it runs for 7 seconds. It's called a hook. And it's a very, very nasty thing. And it is actually, that one image that Dr. Holmes described of is absolutely viral. And so what kid or young boy especially doesn't want to see a cool, motorcycle riding on one wheel, very dangerous. And then if they look at it for 2 seconds, which a lot of children, don't look at everything all the way, and then they just save the file, and they decide, a few months later, they've got a friend that's into motorcycles, so they send it to them, right? No harm, no foul. Unfortunately, as Dr. Holmes said at the very end of that, is some very, very hardcore child porn. 2 boys having sexual intercourse, 2 prepubescent boys. And so that file is being shared, and it seems to be more prevalent in the college community, but the high school kids, junior high school kids, elementary school kids, none of them are immune. And so you actually can get charged with aggravated child abuse with the images and what the interaction is. There's a criteria, and that's punishable by 15 years in state prison. Just one image. And so as juveniles, the unfortunate thing, the juvenile system is a little more lenient, but if a child is over the age of 18, they can be charged as an adult. And that is a nightmarish issue. So what are some popular social media platforms? Everybody's familiar with Facebook, Snapchat. I will tell you Snapchat, I have a nickname for it with my kids. When they were growing up, I called it Chap Snap. I didn't like it. And I have seen hundreds of cases come across my desk where somebody's Snapchatting, they think it's another kid of like age, sometimes they share something, and then all of a sudden, somebody sends them an image. They may not look at the image at that current time, they may look at it later, they may download it or save it, and it's child porn. Every application or platform that allows for transfer viewing, there's one out there called Telegram where you actually never bring it onto your computer, but unfortunately, Telegram reports it and identifies the IP address, whether you downloaded it or not, and then they find that you did view it. And so, and for each one of those, it's a separate count. So back to the possession, constructive or actual. Constructive possession is it's on a computer or a device, and so then they go through and they identify whose username is there, what the sent emails are from that device, and they build a circumstantial case. In addition to that, law enforcement will attempt to get an admission, which is pretty key in these cases because they have to place the person at the keyboard. And what we're finding in doing these cases, and I'm unfortunately becoming somewhat of an expert in the defense area on these cases, is that the kids will not recognize what the image is, or as Dr. Holmes said, they don't think anything of it. Because remember, we're talking about children. And so they just think, oh, that's weird, that's gross. Our children are not educated on bad image versus good image. Not at all. How many of you have ever had your children in a seminar like this or anything else where they can understand parameters of good image and bad image? And the minute a kid or your child has something that's uncomfortable, we teach them good touch, bad touch, and they come to you, then you immediately, are in a quandary and need to contact a criminal defense attorney and go through a protocol. If you try to take it to an expert and get it scrubbed, that expert actually will mandatorily report it to law enforcement. So the entire community is very aware, much more so than they ever have been in the history of our country, aware of bad images. And when I say bad images, illicit, illegal images. It is an epidemic. And Dr. Holmes and I have talked about this many times, and it's so sad to see cases where we have very bright children, children that are not out to do anything wrong, that are actually probably the saints of college compared to all of us. For everyone who went to college, I'm sure you never went out and did anything or drank, anything like that. I'm just grateful that we didn't have these when I was in college. It's a scary thing. And any device, a tablet, anything connected to the internet or has the ability to connect to the internet and accept an image or view an image is a danger. And so what do you do about that? Well, you can do a couple of things. You can go to Apple and you can study up and go to their website about parental controls. If there's any way to block the download or transfer of images, your children are going to be upset. Well, I can't send my friends a selfie or a picture or anything like that. It's a balancing act. Because social media in today's society is like an appendage to most kids. If you take it away from them, they feel like they don't have an arm and they really fight it. And so there's a balance there, but there needs to be an education and awareness component. And so Dr. Holmes asked me if I would do this. I gladly am going to do it. We're going to improve this process so that we can create an awareness and training. And at some point I'll be able to put this up on my website, and I give permission to the school to share it so that we can start that awareness now, because it is truly sad. I used to think that the saddest case I would get would be a DUI manslaughter where somebody made a poor choice to drive and then accidentally hit somebody and killed them. Then you have that's bad on both ends, because one person's family is devastated because there's a death. The other person's family is devastated because somebody's going to go away to prison for the next 14 to 30 years. And so I now say that child porn and hooks and all these little tricks and the grooming that goes on social media is now, to me, the greatest tragedy, and it doesn't involve death, because it captures so many innocent people that just don't know. And unfortunately, in our society and in our system of jurisprudence, ignorance is not a defense to the law. And as Dr. Holmes pointed out, as males, our cold cognition, or our ability to think through something and go, oh, this isn't right. Maybe I need to stop or talk to a parent or a teacher or somebody about this before I do anything. Treat it like you found a gun and don't touch it. The kids don't do that. Kids are moving constantly and they're just not thinking things through. As males, that doesn't develop till 25, fortunately, if you're a female. You're lucky and your species is genetically more advanced and you develop around the age of 16 or 17. So let's go back to the social media sites. There are some popular ones in Discord. I want to warn you, I would not let my child on Discord in any way, shape, or form. Discord started out as a platform, and it's a very good platform. It's well designed. Unfortunately, it is flooded with sexual predators. Sexual predators who have profiles that match your child. They will target children that they identify on Instagram, anything where they're out there on the web, and they will then begin and find a way to have a conversation with them, reach out to them as if they're a kid in Milwaukee or some other place, and they will already know all of the words to say, the identifiers to make them feel like, hey, I'm having the same problems. Hey, I'm into the same things, all that. And then all of a sudden, somewhere during this conversation, and some of these are some super sick people, they will actually groom your child for a year, for 6 months, for a week, sometimes a couple of days, and then all of a sudden they'll say, hey, let me send you some really cool pictures. And they will send a file with a bundle of pictures. And that bundle may not include all child porn. It may include other things. And so, but in there will be child porn, and there can be hundreds of images. And in the state of Florida, you're charged for each image. And so once they capture that, anyone that gets, 10 images and above is going to score prison, mandatory prison time. And so when you start getting into the numbers, so they send a file with 100 images. What kid is going to go through 100 images? They're just not. They're going to click on a couple, and they go, oh, that's kind of weird and cool, but then they don't erase it, and even if they do erase it, it still stays on the system. We think we delete our files and empty our deleted file, that those things are gone. They are not. They stay there. And so it takes an expert to go in and scrub the hard drives, the system, but oh, wait a minute. Now we have iCloud, right? We're all pitched to back things up. So now, bigger problem. And then how many of you guys share the cloud? Have family sharing of photos? Well, guess what? Guess who's in possession of child porn now? So, anybody getting that uneasy feeling?
Can I just ask, I'm assuming at the end of this, you're going to do us the luxury of at least telling us, what do we do
Yes.
in the instance that we get, we
Yes.
become aware of such a thing? Because like you said, okay, we told them now you're in possession of like a gun, a figurative
Right.
gun. And I've done my best to kind of instruct my kids, but I don't know that I'm telling them the right thing to do. So
When Dawn's done, I'm going to talk to you about how to have these difficult conversations with your children, and I can just tell you what I say to my kids. I tend to be a little bit more open with my kids because unfortunately they get exposed to a little bit more. I mean, I don't take them to court, except that one time. Don't tell them, Dawn. But it wasn't for that. But there's a hurricane evacuation. It's not my fault. We had no place to go. But there are things conversationally that you can do, and unfortunately, sex is so taboo, and it's so uncomfortable to look at your child and think of them in a way that they would ever go down this path. And the reality is, if we can view this as natural, normal, developmental, biological, it takes the stigma and nervousness away. It's still an uncomfortable conversation, but if you're saving them embarrassment, loss of a scholarship, prison time, because I'm getting kids, the misnomer, and Don can tell you, is that you will only be charged as an adult if you're 18. That is not true. The state of Florida has charged kids as young as 10 and direct filed them as adults. I've had a 13-year-old client. I've had kids that were direct filed for possession of child pornography when they're 16. They're still legally a child. So I will talk to you when Dawn is done about the way I approach my children, but also I can ask you the ages and kind of what I think is the best way. Because yes, the goal was to scare the bananas out of you and then tell you how to fix it.
It happens, right? Like if you all, because, and don't Mr. Bassett probably knows this too, like it's a real thing. Like if you get an image sent to you, that's the scariest one to me. If you get an image sent to you.
Yes, because you
why
didn't ask
did you-
for it.
You didn't ask.
Well, and
for
I've
it.
already had this conversation with my son because he's 13. I haven't yet with my daughter, she's 10, and I probably need to. And I can tell you what I said and why. Well, you know what, are you okay, Don, if I just tell him really quickly? Because legally, I don't know that maybe I made a mistake. And so maybe Don will fix this. What I told my 13-year-old is, listen, if you get something sent to you that is in any way, shape, or form, somebody without clothes, or is a little bit sexy, I want you to not erase that, but I want you to immediately call me. No, don't call your dad because he'll freak out and be like, erase that. And he's smart, but that's the knee-jerk reaction. He's like, get that off. So I told him, I want you to call me. We're gonna have a conversation. And then we are going to text. You are going to send me a text. Mommy, I got something sent to me I didn't ask for and I don't like it and it makes me uncomfortable. And I'm going to say, who sent it to you? Go ahead and erase it and I will call that person's mom or dad. And I'm gonna screenshot that conversation because it's what that conversation shows is a lack of intent on my son to have asked for it, and also he's expressing his discomfort with it. And then I'm saying, you need to get rid of it and I will contact the person's mom.
Wait, hold on. You
I-
want him to send you the image?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay. I didn't think so. I want to
Absolutely
make
not.
sure.
So-
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's more years in prison.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
possession is
Yeah.
one, distribution, which is sending it.
Okay, so
Okay.
say it one more time. Then. Go
So,
through it one more
and I
time.
can write this down.
That'd be
And I will email it to Mr. Bassett.
But I'll do one better. If Dr. Holmes will write that down, I have committed to partnering with her to make this presentation better. These questions you're asking are questions that I have. So, for example, we know our children, or hopefully they know, if they see a firearm, first of all, don't touch it, and you need to notify an adult immediately. And so I use that example because, you know, most kids are very afraid of guns and touching guns, and we've taught them, hey, that's danger, danger, because a gun is only has one purpose. It's a mechanism of death. And so if you think about these images as if your child has stumbled upon what is, you know, a gun, in this case, a questionable image, even questionable. Don't try to explain to them what child porn is, but if there are any pictures of, you can extend it to adults because they may think that some prepubescent kids, because remember their development, their brain development isn't to the level that we are as adults. And they may accidentally think, oh, well, these are adults. No, any image of any skin in any interaction, whether individual or not, they need to be aware of that and treat it like it's a firearm, like it's a gun that they just found on the street. They don't touch it. They call mom, they call dad, they notify, you know, the school, and are being proactive. And what I will commit to do is I will commit to reaching out to different law enforcement agencies and pose the scenario to them and see what it is. My advice is to contact a criminal defense attorney, a very good one, who has worked in this area and partners with a group of experts in digital forensics, because that's truly the only thing that will guide you, and then you can go through it. An attorney can reach out to law enforcement and say, hey, I've got this situation, without disclosing any names or anything else. And there are other procedures too to handle it, but there needs to be a checklist, and we need to start educating people. And I hear St. Mark's is one of the best schools in the state. I'm sure it is one of the best schools in Broward County. And so you guys will get the benefit of starting this campaign, and I hope that it goes nationwide. I do know there are several other people out there. I don't believe there are attorneys that are presenting this, but partnering with Dr. Holmes, she sees the forensic psychological side, where kids are not sex offenders, they don't have sexual deviant behavior, they're not people that we are looking for, or law enforcement is looking for And so it's tragic. But that's because we don't teach them. And as adults, how many adults know what to do or even thought of an inappropriate image as a gun? Because I'll tell you this, I have adult clients, I have accountants, you name the line. I will tell you how bad this is. Without disclosing, there is a CIO, Chief Information Officer, for one of our statewide agencies, a very large agency. And I was talking with him, and they actually had a secretary down in another part of the state, in one of their larger offices, was looking for images to do a Christmas newsletter to email to everyone. And she was just searching Christmas images, and in doing so, she clicked on an image that took her to what's called an onion node in the dark web. The web we use every day is a small percentage of the actual internet. And the dark web is not a place anyone ever needs to go, because everything there is for nothing but crime. That's it. It's just the dregs of the dregs. But it took her to an onion node and downloaded all of this aggravated child porn to her state computer. And she was unaware of it. And so the IT department got wind of, law enforcement, and actually the CIO had to go down, and they had to get a team of people together and bring law enforcement in and isolate the images, scrub the images, and it worked out. But I will tell you, had that same situation happen to any one of you who doesn't have a CIO or someone else who walks them through the procedures and secures and isolates it like a virus, then you would not get the same privilege of working with law enforcement on that image. So that's the only reason I say contact a criminal defense attorney, because that will help guide you to make sure that you don't say the wrong thing, expose the child to something else, and more importantly, that you have your ducks in a row prior to going to law enforcement, so there's no question that this is not something you wanted, it was just sent to you. And they have the forensics tools to be able to see that. But law enforcement right now takes it, if you receive the images and you open them, you're guilty of child porn. And our juvenile courts are about to explode if they're not already busting at the seams on these cases.
So I want to be clear, because what you had asked was, and Don is saying, like, if you receive something, you need to contact a defense attorney. Before your child erases it, you need to see it. They can't send it to you. That is absolutely, don't ever do that. That's like a massive no-no. And it's a federal crime. But you need to see it, because, for instance, if my son receives another little boy's backside, that's a joke, and I'm not going to contact a defense attorney. I'm going to call his mom and be like, dude, enough, please. Just so you know, I understand it. Your kid's normal. It's normal stuff, but please let him know not to send it, and please tell him my son can't receive it. If you see, however, something like what we're talking about that's not, just middle school impulsive nonsense, and girls do this too. If it's something, and you know it when you see it, because it'll make your breakfast time come up. And then that is when you would contact law enforcement, because if you're looking at a video of what he described this motorcycle thing went into, that is a whole different level. And that's different. But, so I want to be clear that, if your son's friend sends him a picture of his rear end, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's something you can, you still want to go through that conversation. You still want to screenshot the text that you have with your child and reach out to the other person's mom. But that's not something that's, that's goofiness, still illegal, but different in a level. And I think what Dawn is saying is, if somebody sends something to your child, like on Snapchat, or somehow they get a hold of your kid's phone number and they text it. When I got Brady's phone for him a year, so he was 11, and I got him a cell phone. Evidently his number used to be somebody's grandfather's number, and nobody bothered to tell the grandchildren, who I guess are adult. And so he got like 8 messages, happy birthday, grandpa, blah, blah, blah. And he brings it to me, he's like, I don't know what to do with this. And so I just said to one of them, I said, listen, this phone number now belongs to my 11-year-old. Please let everybody in the family know this grandpa changed his number. Okay, fine, thank you. Almost a year later, somebody writes, "Merry Christmas, Grandpa." And he brings it to me, I said, "Listen, this is a 12-year-old boy's phone. Grandpa changed his number." And the person writes back, "Well, I wouldn't mind talking to a 12-year-old boy." I mean, every time those numbers pop up, I block them for him because I don't, and I immediately completely freaked out. I didn't respond at all. I just blocked the number, and I had a very hard conversation with my child. If anybody reaches out to you, because now they have the number, right? So they can use someone else's number. Anybody, you get a text and you don't know who it's from, you bring it to me. Even if you think it's harmless, if it's not someone you know, I need to see this, because somebody made a response that I don't like, and I didn't give him the details. But so, again, what Don is saying, when you reach out to a criminal defense attorney, it's when you get child pornography. Like, you'll know it when you see it. There's a big difference between, your son's friend doing impulsive, stupid boy stuff and you receiving what has been produced in someone's back room. You know it when you see it, and I'm sorry if you ever have to see that, because it's awful. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew. I know what he's saying, and you're like, "Oh my God, I have to call a defense attorney right now." But it's when, if you ever receive something that is really, truly child pornography, Sorry, John.
Oh, no, not at all. And let me tell you, I get calls where I don't charge anybody and I give them advice on things. That's why I'm saying reach out to someone. And I hope none of you ever have to contact a criminal defense attorney. I'm available. This is an area that is probably becoming one of the main areas in my practice, and I have what I think is the best forensics team. They're out in Phoenix, and it's a family that's devoted their whole life to digital forensics. And there's so many things about router configurations, Wi-Fi protection, everything else that are, beyond me as an attorney, but I'm learning. And I'm glad to take this moment as a springboard to create a protocol that law enforcement appreciates and identifies with. But what's scary is, have you guys seen any ads where the federal government or state government has put out an ad warning of the dangers of this, so that, if this happens with your child, contact law enforcement, don't touch it, treat it like a gun. These are things that people aren't thinking of. And so if we don't start now, there are going to be hundreds and then thousands of children weekly that are going to get picked up or get involved in this. Now, the legislature is, whatever you think of the legislature, but you need to call your senator, congressperson, and say, "Hey, what are the protections for children?" And the legislature actually created a statute where children who are in intimate relationships that send images to themselves to each other, in other words, boyfriend, girlfriend, and high school is where this becomes most prevalent. There actually is a statute that gives them some immunity, because the legislature was able to realize that, if it's two consenting adults sending photographs of each other, it's just juveniles who don't think things through. And so there are some statutory protections, but right now, there are not statutory protections for the circumstances we are describing, and there should be. There should be affirmative defenses for an unknowing child to receive something from a third party that they believe and have been tricked into believing is someone just like themselves. And children are curious, they're social, and they're social through the internet, and they truly, one of the hardest things, and Dr. Holmes can explain this to you, is having to break through that barrier and explain to these children that this is not who you think it is. And it's really hard, it's almost cultish, because the groomer, the predator, who is some 60-year-old pervert sitting on a computer who has a lot of technology experience, but more importantly is just grooming hundreds of children. It used to be in our society, predators would groom children by, posing as photographers and then trying to, win their affection over and buy them things, and then try to, swoon the parent into saying, "Oh, well, he can stay with me or she can stay with me." That's the old way of doing it. Now they do it through the internet. And don't think for a minute that your children may not be talking to someone for a period of months or sometimes years, and suddenly someone sends them a bus ticket or something else. And I had a case as a young prosecutor back in the 90s where I had a kid that law enforcement caught her at the Greyhound bus station before she was getting on a bus to go and see her friend in North Carolina. And had we not found that child would have been on a milk box. Their picture would have been on a milk carton, and that's how scary it is. So if you're all feeling that uncomfortable, queasy feeling because you love your children, you want to protect them, that's good. So now let's take it to the next level, and let's be aware and start educating our children of the awareness. So I'm not seeing those cases as much. And by the way, I have no economic reason to sit here and try to publicly create a groundswell to protect our children, and not only our children, protect you. If you do family sharing, any automated sharing with the multiple devices in your family or all your devices, I don't do that. I don't do that because God forbid something get on my phone and then it goes to all the other devices. It's a crazy thing. I'll leave you with this too. It's not necessarily people in this day and age. Some of these predators are very tech savvy and they create bots, web bots. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, a web bot can sit in your computer and you don't know about it. Google has an entire team of engineers, and 5 years ago they had 300 engineers that all their purpose was to fight machines or web bots. And web bots are a form of malware that sits on your computer and you have no knowledge of it, not unless you take it to a forensic specialist or someone who has some forensic knowledge to be able to find it. And it studies the person on the device, studies their habits, who they talk to, how they text message, and then it learns enough to start acting like the person who owns the device. And then that, for the predators that create these machines that start automatically downloading or putting your child out there as soliciting child porn, when truly it's the predator just using their IP address through technology, it is super scary. So at this point, my advice is don't do any family sharing and start educating your kids. And Dr. Holmes would be more adept at telling you how to talk to the kids, because it is. I mean, we all remember when, we started getting curious about sex or boys or girls, and, it was devastating to sit, or at least was for me. I was raised in a southern home, and that was just very taboo. So, I think my mom gave me a book to teach me about sex, and I just wanted to crawl under the table and cover my head. We can't do that anymore. We need to tell our children, we're not teaching them the birds and the bees, we're teaching them good image, bad image. And remember, a bad image can have a first component of it that's very enticing to a child. And it'll be enticing to girls, and it'll be enticing to boys. The wheelie one that's going around, boys look at that and they go, oh, this is really cool, especially boys that are into motorcycles. So I can tell you, if they have boys or girls that are into dolls or anything else, they will find out what, is something they like, or this group of kids that they're trying to target like this, and then they'll attach porn to it, either to try to get them to look at it and become curious about it and ask questions so they can then send them more files, or it'll just be a hook and they'll just look at the wheeling, go, this is cool, and send it to all their friends, and then they're guilty of distribution. So there are just so many dangers out there and so many things, but there's absolutely no large effort. Now, there are several people out there that speak on this topic and things of that nature. Dr. Holmes came to me and said, would you be willing to do this? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm more than welcome to allow this to be presented by the school and shared with the parents of the school. I would ask, that any questions go through a central person, just so I'm not getting 100 emails from people I don't know. And I'm more than happy to work on those questions and share it so that everyone here can know that this movement, or public service announcement, or however you want to couch it, is something that is so serious, and it's a preventative measure. It's much more to be proactive and educate the kids on a level they understand, so that when they see an image or something is not right, or somebody sends them a bunch of images, because kids don't transfer multiple images. They just don't. Not in this form. And so teach them that. Do not let your children go on Discord. Do not let your children go on any of the websites that Omegle. These have become overrun with predators. And the kids think, and some of the predators act as, celebrities. Many of them. I mean, they just have so many tricks, I couldn't go through them in a seminar for the next week. So it starts with training the children. It starts with an awareness with the parents. It starts with making sure your devices are as secure as they can be, so that images, are not automatically shared. And I think the technology will develop where, the phones will recognize and be able to block certain images. But right now, that's not happening. And so the best way to do this is to educate children and parents. Now, I'm more than happy to help in any way I can. Dr.
Go through
Holmes?
the list of what those
Yes,
are.
so there's, if anybody has gamers, Discord's huge, and so my children are allowed to game. They are not allowed to have open chat. That is off the table. The exception is, and I will see this happen, where they are on an Xbox or a PlayStation, and then they'll have their phone where they're on like a call with somebody. One of the ways to avoid that is to get on a Discord, because Discord opens chat amongst gamers. So it is, if your children play video games, Discord is very popular, it's very on there. It is not as regulated, even though they do report a ton of things, it is not as regulated as Facebook. Every single time, and I'm telling you about the children and young adults that get arrested, and but I also, the bulk of my work is really adult sexual offenders. And the majority of those are not people that touch anymore, it's people that create these images and these videos, or that distribute them, or lure children. And what they do is they pose as a gamer, they play Minecraft. I mean, we're talking like what little kids play. And they get good at it, and they get savvy at it, and they get into a group, and they start chatting, and they say that they're a 10-year-old, and they just put some cheesy photo of a 10-year-old out there that's not them, or a 12-year-old, or a 15-year-old. And they absolutely say, contact me on Discord, it's easier to talk there. So Discord, for me, is a no-no. And take with a grain of salt, I am paranoid about this kind of thing, so I'm real tight about it. But Discord, to me, there is absolutely zero benefit to having an underage child on an app that allows you to open chat with anybody. If you want to talk to your friends, talk to them on the phone. You can chat and text back and forth on the game with your friends. You don't accept invites from anybody else. If you don't know them, you don't do it. So Discord is a no-no. For me, Omegle is a no-no. And again, this is what the adult predators and individuals that possess, and we're talking 10,000 videos. And I had, years ago, retired City Miami police officer, 31 years on the force, was in possession of more child pornography than anybody in the state of Florida ever. I mean, so we're talking bank executives. So these people that engage in child pornography are very different characterologically and professionally than what we're used to seeing people that actually engage in a contact offense. They are, unfortunately, high functioning. They don't glow in the dark. They're not, I mean, they're creepy for what they do, but in their regular life, they come across as very high functioning. We have a law enforcement officer recently. So Omegle is another one. So what I see frequently is Telegram, Omegle, and Discord. Those are absolutely off the table.
There's a new one, Kick.
Oh, Kick is a no-no, and Kick is very popular with kids, K-I-K, particularly young adults. It's a place where it's a lot of dating goes on, so it's really popular, like right when you get into college. It's a big no-no. Snapchat is a bit of a problem, but again, Snapchat is such frequent, it's so popular. So what I say is, I tell my kids, and they don't have Snapchat yet, but when they are going to do this, they can be friends with whomever is a friend, And if you meet somebody, because I can create an account that says that I go to Cardinal Gibbons and I'm 17, and and then all I have to do is view your Instagram account, your Facebook, your mom's Facebook if it's open. The other thing is if you have children, you do not have open Facebook or Instagram, you privatize those. Because I can go on and look and see all of your children. I take my car tag off the minute I pull out of school. When I go to Target, I can't tell you how many people I see. I now know your last name, the approximate ages of your children, and where they go to school. So it's great on campus, but one time I was mad because I fell asleep and I left it it's in my driveway, and I'm like, all these people walking by know everything about my kids. And so I know that I'm really tight and paranoid, but it's just because I can't not be. So Snapchat, again, that is used so frequently, so you don't want to look at your kids and be like, you can't do that, because it creates another kind of rebellious issue if they're the only one in their friend circle. So what I say is that you limit and tell them they have to engage only and accept only with people that they know. Just because somebody can pose as, your friend Jamie's friend that goes here, and it's not really them. So that's what I would say about that kind of thing. But Telegram is a no-no, Omegle's a no-no, K-I-K is a no-no, and Discord. When I interview adult sexual offenders and possessors of child pornography and distributors of child pornography, that's where they meet kids. That's where they find
Hey guys, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I hear pots and pans and it's cutting out the sound on this end, so you guys aren't getting a good recording to present to other people.
Thanks. There's nothing we can do about it. They have to work.
I think we're
So
stuck.
sorry. Thanks. Sorry, Don.
So the last thing I'll say is when I talk to the kids about it, I just tell them that, because there's a lot of questions given ages about sex in general. So what I just talk to them about is that sex is a natural thing. It is a thing that, happens to all of us. It is a thing, and it's how you define it in your family as to what's appropriate. I talk to them about being able to trust other people, being, that your body is yours and it's all you have, and it's something special, and I made it in my belly from scratch, and you need to be respectful of it. But also that it's up to you to know whatever makes you feel uncomfortable, particularly girls. Whatever's uncomfortable in your stomach, trust that. We teach our kids to be so polite. We teach our kids to be so nice that it tends to direct them to where they're not paying attention to something inside them. And I have told my kids, if something makes you uncomfortable, I don't care if it's a parent, another parent, a teacher, or a police officer, you don't have to do what that person says. If something in your stomach makes you nervous and uncomfortable, you need to listen to that. If you receive something on your phone and it makes you uncomfortable, you listen to that. There is no pressure to fit in, there is no nothing. If you're ever concerned about something, you ask me. The other rule in my house is you cannot Google questions about sex, and you cannot ask Alexa. Alexa is my account. Do not ask Alexa anything like that. And it's uncomfortable, but your kids are gonna come to you with the most ridiculous questions. So on Google, within 1 or 2 clicks, you can find child pornography. Because the internet is so vast, and Google works really hard, and they have the best of the best, but they can't catch everything. So, some of my clients clicked a website that was listed on the second page of a Google search for wallpaper, for cars. Clicked on a website and saw cars, architecture, nudity. It's 15, clicks on nudity, right? This is, so, they need to know they can't Google questions about sex. That as uncomfortable as it might seem, they need to come to you. And the most important thing is your kids need to get their information under your roof and from you. Because the longer you wait to tell them these things, I guarantee they're going to step out and find it from friends, they're going to Google it, and that's not what you want. So anyway, so now that we scared the Jesus out of anybody, is there questions, or do you want to, I don't know if you want to cut that and we do questions off, I don't know what's easier for you.
I would like to share a resource. I have some excellent law clerks, and we publish blogs as often. If you Google our website, go to our blog post. We have blog posts on sexting. We're trying to write on this topic as much as possible and get information out there. And so again, any questions as parents, whether you go through the young man sitting behind the camera or Dr. Holmes, if you can get those questions to me, I have a team I'll put together, and this can be a project. I'm more than happy to create space on my website to publish videos or anything else that answers questions or gives safety protocols if the unfortunate circumstance that a bad image arrives on a device, or you're made aware of it, or you even have a concern of it, so that you can protect your children. Because one of the things that scares me is children actually, in looking at like-age children, sometimes think, oh, this is okay. I had a client one time tell me that wasn't sure, so asked her friends, and all of her friends said, oh, no, it's fine because it's people of our same age. And that's just not the way it works. So rather than let children figure it out themselves and take the path of least resistance, which typically at that age is not the right path, we need to educate. And the only way to do that is to get it out there. So please, and if you go to the website and there's not something covered, you send the question directly to me at my email address, and I will assign it. Somebody will research it and will post it. And I truly want to make it a resource, because I am really tired of seeing these kids come in, and it just, regardless, the emotional component of it, once we meander through it and resolve it, is just devastating. You can't unring that bell. I had one kid that is very bright, probably going to graduate high school, and Dr. Holmes knows about this case, and is somewhat on the autism spectrum, but high functioning and very bright, very sweet kid. But he was groomed online. He was shared photos that he shared with his friends, and the state of Florida is prosecuting him to the hilt. I luckily have a prosecutor who has some common sense and realizes this. But the unfortunate side of it is that the child had a lot of child porn. And those large files that were sent, he would pick through them and find kids his age because he was curious, and not because he was that. And then he would, his friends would talk about it, so, he started sharing them. Well, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, those files that were tagged were tracked, cyber tip lines came through, and then they go and get their devices, and there are hundreds of images. And so even as juveniles, that can just be, because remember too, child pornography or these images, it gets you something that may be worse than the criminal punishment, and that is you're on the sexual offender registry for life.
For life in Florida, yes.
Juveniles are not immune from being on the sexual registry for their life. The good thing is the legislature saw fit that if the prosecutor prosecutes the case and files charges and gives a withhold of adjudication, currently, as the legislature has it, the child does not have to register on the sex offender registry, but they still have to be on probation till age 19. They go through sex offender counseling and treatment. And Dr. Holmes can tell you the sex offender counseling system and program is not conducive to children. It just isn't. And so then you have to get private therapy and everything else. And you're having to hit the therapy on multiple levels because, the children really, this one case, the child really, didn't understand and thought it was okay. And so without us doing something like this and coming together, that's just going to exponentially increase till it's going to be an epidemic.
And just so that we're aware, the child that he's talking about was 15, also had naked pictures of himself that were requested by who he thought was a peer. And it was a 40-year-old man. So, you know, this is a horrible thing. And meeting his parents, these are two people I would love to be friends with. They are lovely people. They love their children. And the dad, who's a coach, he owns his own company and then he volunteers to coach girls volleyball. He looked at me and said, I just didn't know. He said, you know, we lock our doors, we have an alarm. We talk to our kids about, he's like, when I was growing up, you just don't take candy from somebody, you don't get in a van. He's like, I would never have known this. He goes, and I don't know what to do. These people are thunderstruck, and they're people that you would be friends with. So I know it's hard because we're like, that couldn't happen to me. But it could, because these families that we're talking about, you know, they're coming from nice, normal, good, high functioning, a lot of them from private school. And, you know, again, it's just about us not knowing. And this has been such an uptick. I mean, I used to do, the majority of it was death penalty cases for capital murder. Like, that was my specialty. And now all of a sudden it's taken off to where it's all of these cases of young adults and teenagers with possession of child porn. So when I see the shift in my practice and Don sees it in his, we know that this is like a horrible problem. And I'm terrified because I have kids, so I can imagine. Is there anybody have questions for Don? Because I know he has court and I want to make sure that we don't keep him longer. Is there anything?
And by the way, just to put it out there, I'm more than happy to do this again. And so, and if you'll send me the clip to the video, I'd like to take my team and evaluate it and see how we can make it better. But we can do it again. And, you know, St. Mark's can take credit for starting this movement, at least from all of us. This is a scary time. It used to be I'd call Dr. Holmes maybe once a month, maybe once every 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months. I think this last week, 3 times.
I have 4 clients. I'm going to Tallahassee, and I'm seeing 4 clients, and this was in a week.
And those are just the ones that hire me. Those aren't the ones that come in for the interview. Some people cannot afford me. I try to work with these families as much, but they are very labor intensive, especially when the state decides to prosecute your child to the hilt and treat them like they're a sex offender and put a scarlet letter on them, you know, that sticks with them for life. And think of the social implications with the children they've grown up with and built relationships with. I mean, I still have relationships with people I went to elementary school and high school, and you know, it destroys that. You know, you're no, regardless of whether intentional or unintentional, that child just was marked as a social pariah.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Holmes and Mr. Pumphrey. Really appreciate your time. I will send out with the video your website, Mr. Pumphrey, and any other resources that you want us to share with our families. And of course, I'll share this video with you as well. So thank you so much.
If you want, I can put that information while you're recording.
Sure.
You can just Google my name, Don Pumphrey Attorney, and I'm not hard to find in my website. And you can go through and search our blogs and search them for things like sexting, child porn, things like that. Educate yourselves. And if you read a blog and there's a question not answered, you get it to me, we'll get it answered. And hopefully we can get this out there and hopefully even get this presentation up on the web so that so many other people, not you know, throughout the state, but also beyond the state. You know, we're talking about Florida state law here, but there are federal implications. But parents, if there's not, I'm surprised the federal government hasn't started a national ad campaign on good image, bad image, just like we did good touch, bad touch. So I'm honored to be here. Dr. Holmes has all of my information. I'm quite glad for her to share all of that. And please, let's take this moment and this opportunity and let's protect our children as well as our family members. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been my